Good morning. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. This is Dan, back in the DTM studio here in the wood shop, recording our podcast on a Saturday morning. Really having a lot of fun doing this, and the number of listeners continues to grow. So appreciate you guys out there listening to it. Hope it spreads. If we can help people out there, that's what our main purpose is here, and put down some. Really what I think of as just homegrown, down-home recovery juice talk rather than spiced up stuff. And you can certainly hear that with the guests that we have in, I believe. We're just regular guys. This morning we got a treat for you. We have Nick in the studio. He's come in. We've been trying to arrange it for some time. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning.
We've been trying to get him in here. He's a regular on I think you've been a part of every single roundtable one we've done.
Probably,
I think so.
Yeah.
From the beginning ones to deer camp to everything. So you've been the listeners out there should know your voice by now if they don't know you personally already. So that is super cool. I guess we will just get started. I don't see much since I had we will get around to some more things in conversation, I'm sure. So there's no real reason to sit here and promote anything at the moment. We'll mentioned before and after spiritualunderground.org. It was down yesterday for a little bit, which was weird, and it always kind of panics me out. I don't know, and it's not that damned important, but last night it was down, and I was like scratching, and I looked at it this morning, it's back up again. I don't know what was going on, but spiritualunderground.org. You can see pictures, you can see show notes. I'm gonna hopefully continue to put some more content on there. Probably ad for a new book that's coming out in just a few days. It'll be up on there too soon. So usually, just to break the ice, Nick, I usually start out with somebody's sobriety date, and
sure.
Then you've been around the block a time or three, so you know where you can take this story where you want to take it.
Sounds good. Yeah, my sobriety date is December 13th of 2013. That was Friday the 13th of December, so
yeah,
pretty cool.
A lot of 13s in there.
Yeah.
A lot of weird, not weird, but those little, 2013, the 13th and a Friday, all to boot.
Yeah. My sponsor, when he met me a day after that day, said, "You got to keep that sobriety day. That's a cool one."
Yeah.
So I've done my best. So, yeah. That's when this whole awesome journey began for me. But really the journey of alcoholism, it's funny in retrospect. Once you get some recovery, you can start tracking back your alcoholic thinking a lot further back than you thought you could.
Yeah, right.
I can track mine all the way. I mean, honestly, I can track mine all the way back to kindergarten. My first alcoholic thought, not a thought of drinking, just the thought of being different than people around me. Trying to hold certain things in and have maintain an image for the world outside of me. So I can track that all the way back there.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that as I get more clarity going forward in recovery, and my past becomes more and more clear to me. That for a while there's like a real veil between me and a certain point back that I had trouble remembering back through. I don't know if that's almost like a safety mechanism, or I think it was really just the cloudy thinking and some kind of weird phenomenon when your head starts clearing, of not seeing back. I don't understand. I'm not going to try to understand it, but again, like you said, I start becoming more and more clear about my past as I move into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that cloudiness is that the substances we used were doing their job. That's what we were trying to do, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
cover all that stuff up.
Yeah,
and we forgot about certain traumas and stuff, and now, I mean, some people might think that it's not a blessing to deal with those, but I do, because they were lurking under there.
Right.
They were waiting to sabotage me. So now that I can see them, I can deal with them.
Yep. Continue to shine some light on them and uncover them and kind of get the dirt off of them. And
right.
That line that says more will be disclosed.
Mm-hmm.
It means a lot of different things to me, and that's one of them. Is uncovering that past. I think it also means things to the future too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not content to let sleeping dogs lie anymore. If something comes, through in my brain that I need to deal with, I'm not content to cover that up anymore, because I know what that does to me. It tears me apart.
Right.
But yeah, I could try. my mom and I have talked about this before. The first day of kindergarten, we carpooled with this buddy of mine that lived around the corner, because we had to drive to school. And the first day we went to kindergarten, my mom drove us, and my buddy was crying when we got dropped off at school. And I really quickly tried to distance myself from him because I didn't want to, I was already projecting this tough guy image at 5 years old. And then the next day, my mom said that she tried to give me a kiss in the car before I got out to go into school, and I made her lean down in the car so no one would see.
Oh, yeah? Wow.
Yeah, and those can sound like funny anecdotes, but knowing what I know now, I know that even at 5 years old, for whatever reason, I already had this pattern of trying to show the world a curated life, basically.
Yeah.
And so it's funny, those are relatively innocent, but
yeah, well,
it's
putting on the mask.
Yeah,
already.
Yeah, but my upbringing, by all accounts, was pretty good. I mean, I have parents that are still together, that love each other, that love me. I have 3 little brothers. We lived out in the country east of Indianapolis, and we were just rough and tumble outside boys, 4-wheelers and fishing and you name it. We were outside. The thing that I think started affecting my dual personality, if you want to call it that, the alcoholic and the real self, at that age, is that my parents belonged to a very strict Baptist church, and they had a similar. They always said that before, up until I was 2 years old, that they were big potheads, and they called themselves drug addicts. At church, they would give these speeches to all the teenagers, and I, even when I was a teenager, I discounted that because I just didn't. It just didn't put a lot of weight in that. But what had happened to them is that this guy at my dad's work continually asked him to come visit this church, and they ended up visiting, and they had, the quintessential come to Jesus moment at this church, and bought in hook, line, and sinker. And my entire childhood was spent, and into my teenage years at that church, there every time the doors were open, 4 times a week we were there. And looking back, I really developed this thing where I wanted to fit in wherever I was. And so at the church, which, like I said, was really strict, I wanted to be looked at as a strong Christian and, someone that people could look up to and like one of the good kids. But then at school, where that stuff wasn't so cool, I wanted to be something entirely different.
Yeah.
So a lot of my childhood was those two personalities of really being like the go-getter, and my church really didn't feed into my school that much. It was a little bit of ways away from where I went to school, so I didn't even have to.
Yeah, had a pretty good partition between those two things.
Yeah, I had I really did have 2 different lives going on. Actively involved in the youth group and stuff there, and so it was. I definitely began to resent the church because there were so many rules. I mean, we couldn't go to movies, couldn't play cards, not supposed to go to dances, not supposed to listen to music that's not Christian. I really started. I mean, it was one of the number 1 offenders on my first resentments list. Just all of the no's.
Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah, but that was a big part of my life growing up. Then my teenage years was when the trauma started happening, and I've heard a lot of people talking about alcoholics that. There's a lot of genetic component to it, but it's also kind of opportunity meets trauma.
Yeah.
So, you have these crossed wires, and they might never short out your entire life. But if you're in your formidable years and you start experiencing trauma and you have those crossed wires, look out.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I had a series of what I know now to be traumas in my teenage years. Started out with a member of that church acting pretty. He had befriended me. He was an older single guy that was really wealthy, and he befriended me and a couple other of my teenage buddies in the church, and he would do really nice things for us. You know, he would take us to Pacers games and Colts games and whatever we really wanted to do. He would spend money on us, and he just, over the time, he started doing some inappropriate stuff. I wouldn't say that it was a full-on sexual assault kind of stuff, but it was in the realm of sexual misbehavior. And at the time, I was confused. I didn't really know what was going on, because it was never so egregious that I knew for sure that it was bad.
Right.
But at one point, there was a situation that made me uncomfortable enough that I said something to my parents, which led to a big meeting at the church. And I'm willing to admit that I maybe don't remember everything that happened in that completely correctly, because I was 12, 13 years old. A lot of time's gone on. A lot of alcohol and drug abuse has gone on since then. So maybe I don't have clearest memories, but what I can tell you what I carry with from that situation today is that I went into a meeting with the pastor at the church, who up until that point I had no reason not to trust, and came away from that meeting with either I was sort of making something up, or what I was making a big deal out of wasn't a big deal. And I was hurt by that. And to me, and I still kind of feel this way, I think that the people involved with judging that situation looked at this guy who donated a lot of money to the church and thought that as long as there wasn't something super serious with this situation, they would rather keep getting his money.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel believed. So that was kind of the first trauma. And
well, the courage you took probably just to do that. First off, I mean, I imagine your insides were coming out, trying to just get that out, and your soul and spirit knew that you were doing the right thing, and then to be completely discounted, just as has to, that turn of events, it just has to crush a guy's spirit. I mean, I think that I know you wouldn't know how to. At that age, you certainly wouldn't know how to process it.
No.
And if you don't have somebody helping you with that, obviously, if you weren't getting the support on the issue to begin with, you wouldn't be getting help on getting that discounting behavior of somebody else. Somebody discounting your revelation there would have definitely been, I don't know how you would deal with that other than the way we do.
Yeah, it was definitely tough. Around that same time, maybe it might have been a little bit before then, my dad was, country living, I'm sure you're familiar too. Like you scrounge around to get the things you need sometimes. And like, he would go buy things off of farmers that were selling stuff, or we'd go to the junkyard for a car part. And this time, we had gone to a junkyard to find a car part, and one of my brothers and I went exploring around this junkyard because, it was fun. And in the back of a wrecked truck or car, we found like 5 beers and a porno tape. And we squirreled. It was relatively cold outside, so we squirreled that stuff away in our coat and snuck it home with us. And later that day or the next day, I had my first taste of beer, which was an extremely skunked old warm beer. But I do vividly recall saying, "Man, want more of that."
Yeah. It
was definitely the lightning going off in my brain. And then you start introducing, the trauma I just spoke of. And then my mother's the oldest of 10 kids.
Wow.
Yeah. And so her youngest sister, Jennifer, was only 3 years older than me. So we were more like siblings. I'm the oldest of my brothers. She's 3 years older than me. And my mom was pretty active in her and my other Aunt Jody's kind of upbringing. They would spend a lot of time with us. So she was pretty much a sibling. Well, actually, you know what? I'm out of order here because my grandfather died of cancer before this all happened, and that really shook up the home life.
Yeah, personally or the family.
Family, both. Yeah, I mean, he was a fireman. He was a tough guy. He was always, he was definitely an alcoholic, but he was always a hero of mine.
Right. Yeah.
So that was rough. I mean, my mom's family home was always just like this heaven to me. We would go over there for Christmas or New Year's Day, and there'd be kegs of beer on the porch. You'd walk in, and just like that den of smoke and beer breath and laughter, and it was everything that the church wasn't to me. It was fun. It was people being who they wanted to be to me. You know, like I always romanticized that house so much. I looked up a lot to my aunts and uncles, and that's what they were having fun, drinking, you know, and I thought that was the cure for everything I hated about the church.
Right. Yeah.
So
completely normalized it. And
oh yeah. And I looked up to it.
yeah.
I wanted them to accept me more than I wanted the church or my parents to accept me.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah. I sure get that.
So I would, but I was probably 13 or 14 when my grandfather, he got esophageal cancer and passed away relatively quickly. And so that was pretty traumatic. He was kind of a hero of mine. I mean, he was a pretty famous fireman around Indianapolis. Everybody knew him. His funeral was pretty cool. The procession drove around all over downtown Indianapolis to all the fire stations, and the firemen that were on duty stood out and rang the bell for him.
Very cool.
It was a big deal, but even more so than the loss of that, I think looking back, it affected my mother pretty deeply, and she was also going through nursing school at the time, so she just had a lot going on. I think it weighed heavy on her, and throw that into the mix, a teenager that's probably starting to veer off into alcoholism. She probably just didn't know how to deal with me.
Yeah.
And now I know she was doing the best that she could.
Right.
And I don't hold any ill feelings towards her, but it shook things up. It changed the chemistry.
Yeah. And I always want to make sure, because this is a big point to me when I'm working with people. My sponsor made it a big point to me, was that these things we're not blaming these other folks for this. What we do is looking at the causes and conditions of the things, the things that we bumped into in our life that walked us down the road that we landed on. Yeah,
I mean, where I sit now, I've made peace with everything about these situations, and I certainly don't blame my parents for me being an alcoholic. Right. There's no doubt about that. I'm pretty convinced I was born that way, and then a set of events, lit that tinder pile on fire.
Right.
And I don't really think that the set of events is necessarily my parents. But yeah, it
was just makeup. These things were formed almost like clay, and it's not any particular one hammer that hits us that does it necessarily. It might be, could be for some people, could be one major event for some people, but I think for more times than not, it's the creeping effect. It's kind of like the way we cross the invisible line. A similar kind of thing happens to us when we get, these series of events happens that molds our life, and any one of them probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But the conglomeration of all of them in a series over time bends us to, like I said, if you've already got that genetic component in you, then and you have these things bend you that direction. That's the curve you take. The other, I'm not a big Bible thumper by any means, but I do take a lot of the sayings out there, that narrow road thing and the eye of the needle stuff. Mm-hmm. That is not our inclination as humans, I don't think. We go for the goalpost.
Yeah.
And those are the goalposts in life. Is the easy path is to go in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
It just there's some, especially when you already got that pull in you, and I don't know where that comes from, but because there's camaraderie on both sides, right? You see it at the church, and you see it, like in your case, I'm just speaking from the things you've shared today. There's camaraderie at the church, and there's camaraderie at the family thing. Mm-hmm. But certainly the one I'm gonna say, the one looks a lot more inviting, more friendly, more celebratory.
Yeah,
that looks like a celebration. That party,
well, especially compared
and
to
this
the church,
doesn't. Right?
Yeah,
this is the very opposite most times. So yeah, which way are you gonna go? Of course, you're gonna go that way.
Yeah, I mean, especially the comparison to the church that I grew up in. I mean, this is not like the upbeat and fun churches that you see, the mega churches you see.
Yeah, because I think they're bending that too. They're seeing that they need that, to maintain. And I don't really know if it's, that plan necessarily. I'm sure it is to some extent, but yeah, church, like I was on home incarceration. I'd spin off on another, and I would get calls from the department wanting to know where I'm at. They could call me at any time. And I'm at church one morning, and when they called, and I have to answer that phone, right? And I'm in the middle of the aisle. Look, there's 10 people to my left and 10 people to my right, and I answer that phone. It sounds like I'm at a rock concert,
right?
And I'm trying to explain to them, well, what are you doing, Mr. Reeves? I'm at church. It's like, and I'm like, man, and they actually did take it really well, but that did not sound like church. I'm sure on that other side, that was a complete digression into some other land.
Well, the church I grew up in sounded like church. I can guarantee you that. Not a lot of, from my viewpoint, not a lot of joy there.
Yeah, and that was 30 something years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, it was. I mean, and I've talked to my parents a little bit about this, and they even have expressed some regret at staying with that church as long as they did, because they started seeing that it just wasn't working for teenage boys. And I mean, you think about the climate of the late 80s and the early 90s, like the grunge movement and all of that stuff. Like it was just so opposite.
Yeah.
And but I can't look back and redo my mistakes, and neither can they. So, and that's exactly what I told them. Right. So, but yeah, so yeah, my grandfather passed, and the one thing it did do is it really even tightened my mom's family up even more. For such a huge family, we've always been pretty tight. And I mean, now you go over to my grandmother's for Easter, and there'll be 45 people there.
Wow.
And they're all pretty closely, this isn't distant relatives. These are aunts, uncles, and cousins.
Yeah, that's very cool.
It's cool.
I missed that in my life.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But that kind of tightened up that family even more. But then, so a couple years after that, my aunt, the one Jennifer, that was 3 years older than me, she would have been like 19 at the time. She was murdered.
Oh wow.
Her and her boyfriend, the facts of it are a little bit hazy, but they were either dealing drugs or just had drugs, and someone broke into their house and shot them both to steal their money and drugs.
Oh wow.
And
Unreal.
we found out about this watching the news.
Really?
We watched her body being taken down the steps.
Woo.
Yeah. And that was just a soul-crushing moment for me. It was pretty much like watching my older sister being hauled out of an apartment.
Yeah.
That was that to me. I mean, if like we said earlier, it's never one thing, but sometimes it is, and that really was I think the final thing that kind of splintered and really fed that alcoholism part of me. Because then after that, every time that I kind of veered towards that side, like whether my because I wasn't allowed to have music that wasn't Christian music. So if I remember getting caught with Nirvana or whatever, and
yeah,
it was really easy for my mom to say, well, you're going to end up just like Jennifer. It became a fear of hers, and she saw me some of the stuff I was doing was just being a normal teenager. Some of it was not. But some of it was just being a normal teenager. But she just became fearful, and it kind of pushed me further away. So it was that was a tough time. But around the same times when I drank more frequently, I tried weed for the first time. I think I was 16 years old, and that was really a light bulb off in the head for sure. And that was. For years, that was my number one choice.
Yeah. I had it closer at hand for a lot of years than any other substance.
Yeah, me too.
I always had some pot.
Yeah, me too. And even all the way up until the end when I was barely using pot, but I usually had it around. And if you asked me, I would have told you I was pothead, even though I was feeding myself a lot more stronger things than that.
Yeah.
But that was always to me, that was the respectable substance I used, even more so than alcohol. But yeah, I started drinking a lot heavier when I had the chance. I didn't always have the chance because my parents were pretty strict. So
alcohol's kind of tough to get away with.
I learned really good how to lie and sneak and manipulate. That was really those years, like 16 to 18, the last 2 years in my house was like graduate school for my my lying and deceitful nature.
Finishing school.
It really was. I mean, I got, and I don't know how much my parents knew. They've never told me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But I feel like I got really good at hiding things. I had little hidey holes in the house and little hidey holes that I built into my backpack so I could transport stuff around. But it became pretty clear then that when I drank until I threw up or passed out. I didn't drink like the other kids I was around. I wasn't stopping. And that was pretty early on. I didn't really have the drink a couple beers situation pretty much ever in my life. It was the whole bottle or nothing.
Yeah, I can. Same here. The little bit never was enough. I was always the last one, and passing out, and had a little ego wrapped up about how much I could do, whatever substance it was.
Yeah,
I could do more than you. Yeah,
absolutely. And I became the same way, and it didn't really matter what it was I was going to do at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, the deal with my parents was if I wanted to go to college, that they would only pay for a Christian college. So I ended up going to Anderson University for a year, and absolutely hated it. I learned Greek and Hebrew because I was in a religious studies program. And so I started reading more of the Bible in Greek and Hebrew. And I had already really started questioning my relationship with religion and God. But that really was the nail in the coffin for me, was seeing what I viewed to be inconsistencies in all of these teachings. And so that's when, at that point, 18, 19 years old, that I decided that this was no longer for me, that I was an atheist, that I didn't want anything to do with spirituality anymore. Back then I thought religion, God, spirituality were all just synonyms. I did not understand that those things could be, that spirituality and religion were two separate things.
Yeah.
I didn't quite grasp that. So I threw it all away. That to me is really the sickest moment, is when denying any kind of spirituality is what made me the most sick.
Yeah.
And that from then on things got bad. After my freshman year, I stopped going to that school. I got into the full-time into the restaurant industry, and throw an alcoholic into the restaurant industry, and that will mature them, because it's a stronghold. It's always on the top 5 list. Chefs and restaurant workers are always on the top 5 most alcoholics for a profession. And so I met other people like me, and what I didn't know, they taught me. And from there, my disease progressed pretty quickly. I was drinking every night. I was smoking weed. Think it wasn't too long after, I actually, my 21st birthday, I was already doing ecstasy and cocaine and stuff at 20 and 21. Anything, whatever you got, I'm going to take.
Yeah. What is it? What do you have? But those are mighty attractive drugs.
Yeah. Yeah. Hallucinogens. I mean, there's not much I wouldn't try, but I did always put some things aside, or say, like, well, justify my actions by saying, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to smoke crack. I'm not going to do heroin. Never going to do that.
Yeah. Drew some lines in the sand.
Yeah. And I was 21 or 22, and I had a friend from a restaurant supposed to get some Coke and meet me at my house after work, and he shows up at my house 45 minutes after we left work, and pulls out the stash, and it's crack rocks. And I'm like, dude, what are you? He's like, it's the same thing. I'm like, no, it's not. But at that point, what are you gonna do, right? Well, I'm gonna try it. And so 21, 22, I'm already crossing one of those lines in the sand,
right,
down the basement, smoking crack. So yeah, it was rough. A lot of use of any substance I could get my hands on. But kept plugging along through my 20s, doing that. Just I lived with a girl for a time, and she was fairly unhealthy, and so that fed into it pretty heavily. Then after her and I broke up, I actually got a job as a general manager of a nightclub, and that gave me a whole new world, a high class kind of journey in my alcoholism, where I could drink whatever I wanted. I could afford any drug I wanted. I could act out sexually as much as I wanted. And that was another theme for me in my 20s, was the repercussions of that situation with that guy in church was that I was always trying to prove my sexuality. And it caused me to do a lot of misdeeds in that area as well.
Yep.
I'm fairly certain, hurt some girls, or at least take advantage of them.
Yeah.
Especially in that nightclub setting where, I'm the guy with keys. I have all the power.
Right. Yeah.
And
I was thinking there is a bit of a power thing goes on with being in that position.
Yeah.
You get to, and exert that.
Yeah.
Flash it around.
Yeah. I mean, I would use anything to calm whatever was underneath my surface. And all this time, no matter how hard I'm struggling inside, no matter how much I hate my life inside, I'm projecting this demeanor of someone who has it all together and has it all figured out and is happy. And I was not happy.
Yeah.
I was lonely. I mean, I was living in a house in the middle of the party area of Indianapolis for a while by myself, and then I had some roommates. But I mean, it was every waking moment of my day I was intoxicated. Every waking moment. It just didn't matter. I was either smoking weed or drinking or snorting coke. It just did not matter. If I was awake, I was messed up.
Yeah.
And that really set. Before then, I definitely know I was an alcoholic before then, but it wasn't a all day, every day thing. Once I broke up and moved out with living with that girl and had the nightclub thing where honestly nobody would even notice if I came to work drunk. It was a dingy, dark nightclub, so
right, yeah.
It was easy. I had no reason to be sober, and so I wasn't ever. And that set the pattern of, when you give your disease that much space to roam, it's hard to whittle that back at all and say, okay, well, that was a fun year. Let's only drink at night now, or let's only drink on the weekends. Your disease is not going to give that ground back.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
It's just too hard.
Yeah.
And so it's
my
really
days collapsed on me. I do recall a time when I wasn't doing it all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember how that evolved into doing it all the time. It just all of a sudden I was there. My days and nights collapsed into just being high on something and not be able to really operate if I wasn't.
Yeah, and it just does not retreat easily.
No, there was, like you said, no giving up that ground. It does not give up that ground.
No, it doesn't. So that became my new normal. I tried several things to make myself happy. I quit that job and moved to Florida for 8 months. Thought maybe, the old change of geography would work. And I just became an alcoholic in Florida. So, I was there with tourism and whatnot in the restaurant industry. I only had to work three days a week to make the money I needed. So it gave me all kinds of time to do what I wanted. But I came back to Indianapolis again, was miserable down there, came back, and through the years I always wanted to get married and have a family, but I just never could make relationships work because my disease would always win out. I was always more in love with with the demon than I was in love with the girl I was dating. So I always picked that demon.
Yeah.
But I did meet my current wife around that time, right before I was 30. And she's really the first. Everybody else in my life had that had gotten close enough to really get a good glimpse of, like I call it, the demon or the alcoholism, the disease that I have. They didn't stick around. It was I never got violent drinking, but I could get pretty. I have a sharp tongue, and when I was drinking and using, that tongue was super sharp.
Yeah.
And I could say the absolute right thing to just destroy a person in one sentence. And when I was all messed up and hating myself, I did that frequently.
Yeah.
And pushed a lot of people away over the years. My wife's the first person, I met her right before I turned 30. She is the first person that saw something underneath all that was worth sticking around for. And I don't know how she saw that underneath all that sickness, but she did. And I fell pretty hard for her because of it. But I didn't get sober yet, unfortunately. I still had more to go on that. And we lived together for a time, and then we did break up and move out from one another due to my disease and just me having meltdowns and getting so messed up all the time. And she eventually, we decided not to live together anymore. That really destroyed me. Shortly thereafter, her and I still kind of stayed in contact. We had a real hard time not being together. We weren't technically together, but for the past few years, right around that time, my dad and I had started an irrigation company, and we were working together. We were installing lawn sprinkler systems and making pretty good money at it. And he and I had gotten into some silly political fight and decided not to work together that day. And so I just got completely smashed all day long. I mean, pills, weed, alcohol all day long. When my wife came over to see me that night, I was in absolute shambles. I had gotten so mad about the situation or just being drunk that I had punched a door jamb and gave myself a pretty healthy boxer's fracture in my hand. It was that day I agreed to let them take me to a hospital and went into they actually put me on the suicide unit where they took my shoelaces and everything because I had harmed myself.
Right.
So sat there and it was miserable. That I was there with what at the time I thought were some pretty down and out cases.
Yeah. Everybody else was.
Yeah, everybody else was. It was a mistake that I was here. I punched a wall. Okay, I'm sorry. What I did realize is that I needed to stop drinking. It was destroying my life, and that's what I told the doctors there when I told them that I needed to be let out. They wanted me to stay quite a while. They wanted me to do I don't know if that was a long-term place. My memory's a little hazy on it.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't a long-term place, I think the doctors wanted to transfer me to one.
Yeah, was that in Indy?
Yeah, it was in Indy. They definitely wanted to funnel me into AA. They definitely wanted to funnel me into an inpatient program. They saw somebody. I
can't imagine why.
Yeah, right.
Crazy.
Yeah, I have no idea to this day. It was a mess. But I told the doctor that I was fine, that I didn't want to hurt myself, blah, blah, blah. And so I managed to talk, they couldn't hold me. So I got out, and I got out with the idea that I wasn't going to drink anymore. And for a while it worked. I smoked a lot of weed, but I didn't drink. And around the same time, a friend of mine came up to me with an opportunity to move to the middle of nowhere in Michigan and build a huge pole barn and grow copious amounts of weed.
Fun.
Yeah. And I jumped on that with, both feet and went up there and started doing that. And that really, I didn't drink that whole time.
So that like from scratch, there was no building when you went?
No.
So you helped to build this thing actually and put it together.
Yeah, we built the whole system. This was right before all the states started falling to legalization. And so his idea, and this buddy of mine is a fairly smart entrepreneur. Just maybe targets it the wrong direction sometimes, but
well, that's not a bad foresight there. I mean, there's a lot of people making money doing that today.
Yeah, and he was really good at it. He had done it on small scales and basements and stuff for a long time, and I had seen what he had done quite a bit. But he needed somebody like me. He needed somebody that didn't have direction, that didn't have a lot of strings, and that would be willing to live out in the middle of nowhere and do this, because he had other stuff going on. He couldn't be the one living at the barn.
Oh, okay.
So he needed someone to live there and do it. So I did. And I actually got to live close by there. His family had a cabin on a lake in Michigan, and I got to live there. I had a dirt bike, a snowmobile, a boat. There were days I would snowmobile over to the barn, a few miles away. But we were growing 20, 25 pounds every 3 months. So we were putting out a lot of product.
Wow.
And I was making good money, and I was smoking an ounce of weed a day.
Yeah.
I got to the point where just weed wasn't enough. I wasn't going to smoke if I didn't have hash too. So I was super high, but I was going around telling everybody I was healthy because I wasn't drinking.
Right. I'm not drinking.
Yeah. Well,
like a pat ourselves on the back.
Yeah, and I was pretty isolated up there. Especially during the winter, the area of Michigan I was in, was pretty much a ghost town during the winter, because it was a lot of lakes and stuff. So it was all summer cottages. So I was pretty isolated. Spent a lot of time just me and my dog. I look back and I think about all the hard work that barn took, and I think, I wasn't lazy.
Right.
If I would have turned my attention to something more productive, I would have been successful. Something about the being an outlaw always appealed to me.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that aspect of it. Even though I was probably in that barn 13 or 14 hours a day. It was a lot of work. But my wife, and she was my girlfriend at the time, she started contacting me again. And we started kind of rekindling our relationship a little bit, and all of a sudden the isolation wasn't working anymore. So I decided to cash out, move back to Indy, be with her again. And it turned out to be a really good decision, because not long after that, the buddy that owned the barn made a couple of transactions with some people in California, and he ended up getting arrested, and I would have been arrested too.
Yeah.
That's one of those things, looking back, knowing that was probably a higher power deal, because I could have been walking around with a pretty serious record. But I got out 4 months in front of it.
Wow.
But I used that
Did
money
he go to jail? Did he go to jail?
He had money, so
That'll help you stay out of jail.
Yeah, he got some punishment, but he didn't spend much time behind bars. So he got pretty lucky on that. And I've actually talked to him several times since then, and I've actually made amends to him, because whether or not what we were doing was legal or right or wrong had nothing to do with the fact that I was an asshole to him. He gave me an awesome opportunity. I acted like he was an overbearing boss, that martyr complex. Oh, you don't understand me. You make me work too hard. So I've since actually made amends to that guy, make things right.
Yeah.
Which some people maybe don't understand, but I definitely wronged him.
Right. Yep. And some of this, some amends is just cleaning the street. Whether if you really, you don't necessarily have to actually hurt somebody necessarily.
Right.
Maybe if you felt that you had some cleaning to do, some clearing is a term I've been using lately. I've heard some people use it. I just need to clear this thing between me and this other person because it's sitting on me.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was, so I've actually since made that right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I cashed out to go back to Indianapolis and be close to my girlfriend at the time, and I used that money to. What I had always wanted to do was become a chef, so I used that money to go to culinary school. Still not drinking, still just smoking a lot of weed, occasional hallucinogens at a party or whatever, but never drinking. And I remember making these half-ass amends to like my family, like, I'm real sorry, I'm, nothing like what we instruct people to do now, just saying I'm sorry. So culinary school, and then my wife at work ended up getting transferred down here to Louisville, and she went without me for a couple of months, and then I was really in love with her, and so decided to follow her down here and transfer down here to finish culinary school, and got a job in a fine dining restaurant as a line cook, and that's when started having that old familiar friend start whispering to me again, and the lie this time came in the effect of, well, I'm almost done with culinary school. I'm working at a fine dining restaurant, cooking all this amazing food. I need to be able to taste wine with my food. And that's the lie that I told. She was still my girlfriend at the time. The lie I told myself. The lie I told my family when they, at a gathering, and they said, you mind if I have just a glass of wine? And that glass or two of wine. I think I had not drank alcohol for a year and a half.
So you admitted to yourself that alcohol was a problem, and you'd also admitted it to your family members. So you were doing somewhat of it wasn't quite cool to be drinking openly in front of them, but the wine was the door because it's high class if you're drinking a little wine.
Oh, they
and plus it goes with meals, right? I mean, it's part of the food industry.
Yeah. It's I used all that stuff, and I mean. There were no delusions between my family or friends that I had a problem with alcohol. Yeah, I just didn't stop. I kind of blessed or cursed with an iron stomach, so I don't throw it up either. So I just keep going. I mean, I have to pass out.
Yeah, I never was a puker either.
Yeah, oblivion, passing out is the only thing that stops me. Yeah. And running out does not stop me, because I will walk on broken glass to the liquor store and get more. I will pay that guy in quarters if I have to. Yeah. I have before. So I introduced the alcohol back into my life with that lie, and it wasn't. We talk a lot about how our disease lies in wait for the avenue back in, and it's getting stronger. Man, it was stronger. It wasn't a few weeks after that initial glass of wine that I'm back to drinking all day, every day. I, at that point, crossed that other line in the sand and started delving into opiates. It was kind of casual at first, but as the years of this time in my life went on, it got to be very habitual.
Pills.
Towards the end, there were a couple of times that I couldn't get pills, that I actually ended up trying heroin.
Yeah, but the beginning of it was the pills.
Yeah, the beginning of it was the pills.
And it was recreational solely.
Yeah.
It wasn't, because a lot of guys' stories are some kind of injury or something happens and that, leads them into it.
No, I sought it out.
Yeah.
No one prescribed that to me.
Just making that clear here in the story.
Yeah.
Because there is a definite, not that one matters any more than the other, but a lot of guys or people have that deal where they had a surgery or they, something tipped them in that direction. Kind of a little bit, they didn't really seek it out.
Yeah.
Mine's a little different, is that my mom had them, and I remember picking up the bottle. I remember picking up the bottle, reading it, having really no clear idea about what it really was. But I remember seeing it said, take these for pain, and I knew I had pain. Yeah. It wasn't back pain. It wasn't, but I was hurting. And that's the way that led me. And then, like in your end of it, probably from the atmosphere, were they just available in the food industry?
Yeah.
So it was just it was a supply thing where they were there.
Yeah.
And they were easy to get to. People had them.
Well, and a lot of so-called normal people, when they take opiates, they get sleepy or groggy or lazy or whatever.
Yeah, speed for me.
And not only speed, but in the kitchen, it made me feel like a superhero.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I could work all day. You give me a a bottle of pills that doesn't end, and some music and some coffee, and I will work 7 days straight for you.
Yeah.
Back then I could. I could work around the clock for you.
Yep.
Those are my only requirements. So yeah, but it did start recreationally, and I'm still trying to manage. At this time, my still girlfriend at the time and I had decided to get married, so I'm still trying. You know, she knew I had a problem with drinking, but I was doing a pretty good job of hiding it. She definitely didn't know about the pills. She just thought that I went overboard sometimes. She didn't know what she knows now, basically. So, but I was miserable. I was in pain. And I did this thing that I hear so many of us do, is that I'm going to feel better when. You know, we were living in an apartment. I'm going to feel better when we buy a house and I won't drink as much. The same year we're going to get married. I'm going to feel better when this dream of being married finally happens. I had gotten done with culinary school, so I'm going to feel better when I get an actual chef job and I'm not a line cook anymore. Well, the bad thing that happens when you do that is that you get to that moment and you don't feel any better about yourself.
Right.
And instead of that moment making you feel good, it makes you feel worse, because it gives you that hopelessness that if this thing that I've been counting on for so long isn't making me feel better, then nothing's going to. And so I might as well pour more pills and alcohol on this situation. That became what happened. And I've heard movie stars and rock stars talk about this phenomenon too. Like they're sitting there with millions of dollars, the fame, whatever they want, and the things that they always thought would make them happy, and it's not making them happy. There's no more desperate spot than that.
Yeah.
So I just didn't think, my wife, we gotten married, bought a house. She just wanted me to be happy, and she didn't understand why I couldn't be happy. I had everything going for me. I had gotten that sous chef job in one of the top restaurants in town. Was well respected in my industry. I'm married to a wonderful, amazing woman. We own a house. What is anybody else given that set of circumstances is going to have a good time, and I was just miserable. But around that time, I was sous chef at this fine dining restaurant. I had guys that were delivering me pills at the back door of the restaurant all the time. I would, if I couldn't get enough pills, or just because I wanted to, I would drink out of the cooking liquor. In fine dining, you don't cook with nasty liquor. I mean, I was drinking good bourbon out of the liquor cabinet at work,
right.
Taking pills. And I had some really great honors in that job. I got to go to the James Beard House in New York and cook there. And which is, anybody who's not in the cooking world, it's almost, that's the mecca. That's the thing you want to do, is go to the Beard House in New York and cook. It's high line. And I look back at pictures of myself there. I was in a complete blackout the entire time. Here I am, one of the greatest honors that a chef can ever get, and I barely remember it.
Yeah.
About a couple months, my disease was just, this is the Tasmanian devil at that point. Just bumping into everything, running over everything, killing me. Absolutely killing me. My wife and I had, we were trying to start a family. We had gone through a series of miscarriages. That was, I took all that and made that such a selfish pain. Didn't really attend to her. I just used it as another excuse to get as fucked up as I could.
Yep.
And it just, you get
more trauma, more calamity.
Yeah, and everything's just like crescendoing. It's like the whole orchestra is playing different music and getting louder and louder and louder, and it's just chaotic inside my brain, and I'm not letting anybody in there.
Yeah.
Because it is just a nut house.
Noisy.
Yeah, it's just insane. And but one Friday night, super busy at work. I had just overdosed myself a little too much. Not overdosed, but gave myself too many pills, too much alcohol, and I put my head down on my desk in the kitchen at work and nodded off.
Yeah. And that is an overdose, but not in the same way that the common thought of it today with the shooting up the heroin overdoses and that kind of stuff. You certainly overdosed. You don't go to sleep at work.
Yeah. My employees were so worried about me that they had to bust the door down.
So you were in a locked office?
Yeah, it was a locked office, but there's a big window, so all my line cooks.
So they could see you.
Yeah.
But okay.
I
had that. I heard you mention that before, and I was kind of like, well, what would make them, come into a locked room?
Yeah,
necessarily.
They could see me, and they probably needed me.
Yeah. Would this office be locked when you weren't there?
Yeah. We kept all. We had to lock the liquor away from the line cooks. They might take it. Yeah. So yeah, I was in there, and
they had to break the door down.
And so the restaurant owner didn't want to fire me, but she just didn't feel like she had a choice. She couldn't set this precedent that that was okay for somebody in management to do that.
Yeah.
So I think, and I've always told her since, and I usually contact her about once a year and tell her what a great deed she did for me, because that started my journey into the rooms, and I've been thinking a lot about this lately, because I usually ascribe me getting sober to losing that job, and that's been a part of my story for 5 years now. That. And I've even expressed it in such a way to say, I wish I could say that it was my wife that caused me to get sober, but it was the loss of a job. And I was meditating not too long ago and saw that scenario differently. It was, getting fired definitely woke me up, but it's the first real thing that I lost. And the only other thing in my life that I had that I put any value on was my wife. I've always been madly in love with her, and losing something became very real in that moment when I lost my job, because it was a dream of mine. So that getting fired really pushed me right into the open arms of AA, because I needed help. I didn't want to do this anymore. Leading up to the days where I wouldn't work until the evening. She would go to work in the morning. And so I would wake up at 9 o'clock and lay there like I was asleep until she left. The whole time the monologue in my head is, you're not going to go to the liquor store today. You're not going to go to the liquor store today. I have to work later, mind you. And as soon as she's out the door, and I think she's far enough away that we won't run into each other on the roads, 9:15, 9:30 in the morning, I'm down getting a pint of bourbon.
Wow.
And I'm down in that in 5 minutes. That's down the hatch. Then I'm texting the guys to make sure that I can get pills later, because there's no way that I can work now without them.
Yep.
And that was every day for me, every single day. So I was miserable. But that night after, in the days after getting fired, I definitely trying to manage the situation with my wife. I didn't want to lose her. So I agreed to go to AA. I'd always stayed away from AA because of the God talk. I had spent, at this point, 15 years as an atheist, and knew what they put on their wall. I saw the G word. I didn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
But at this point, I had to manage the situation a little better than I had been.
Was it just, did somebody say, what sent you to AA? Was there just knowing that? Just like from, I know everybody kind of has an exposure to it. It's like saying, AAA or McDonald's. We kind of know what it is, but was there something that pointed you that direction?
I actually, I remember doing some research online trying to figure out, basically trying to get my ass out of trouble. And so I was looking around at all the different treatments around
what
town.
might I do?
Yeah. And because I was trying to find a way other than AA.
Yeah.
But every single one of these treatment places that I would look up, one of the requirements is you go to meetings. And so I'm like, well, hell, I might as well just go try this thing. Because if I go to this treatment center, they're going to make me go.
That seems to be the common denominator for around
yeah,
this.
I don't think I'm getting out of this. So I'll never forget that meeting. It was a Sunday morning. My wife went with me. Both of us probably looking like, roadkill. I know I did. And sat in my first AA meeting, and when they said, is anybody here for the first time, their first ever AA meeting, I raised my hand and for the first time said out loud in front of somebody that knew me that I was an alcoholic. That was the first in my series of just a release and a relief come wash over me, just to say that in front of my wife that I'm an alcoholic, and to let one lie escape my body it was my first spiritual experience in maybe my whole life. I had to do more, obviously, but it gave me some instant hope just to say that in a room full of strangers. But after the meeting, a guy just made an absolute beeline over to me, and that turned out to be my still sponsor, Chris. He'll tell the story that he was inside his own head because he had just had knee surgery and he was going through it, and he never went to this meeting. He was only there because he was miserable from going through a knee surgery. And when he heard that there was a guy there for his first AA meeting, he said, well, there's my guy. I can get out of my head by going and helping that guy. And so he came right over to me. We sat in the back of the Token Club and talked for a couple hours. And first AA meeting, I asked him to be my sponsor.
Wow.
We started working the steps.
Your wife was with you that day.
Yeah.
So
my wife was with me. So she
did she come back and sit and listen?
No. Nope. She gave me the space. I don't quite remember what she did. She probably talked to some people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we went to that back room with the couches and sat down and started working the steps that week. I didn't have anything else to do. I was unemployed.
Yeah.
I was given the gift of a free schedule. So yeah, started working the steps pretty seriously. I definitely did. You hear a lot in the program about 90 and 90, going to 90 meetings in 90 days. I spent about 2 months unemployed in that time period. And in those 2 months, I guarantee you I went to more than 90 meetings. I probably went to close to 110 meetings in 60 days. I just threw myself into it. I did not want to lose my wife. At the same week that I got fired, we found out she was pregnant.
No. I
had a lot of vested interest in staying sober.
Right.
I remember the night that I passed out at work, sitting there with her and crying. I'm still intoxicated and saying, I'm going to be a good dad. I promise I'm going to be a good dad. And for the first time in my life, I meant it, and I meant something that I said, and I was willing to go do some work to get it. And that was definitely part of my motivation. But yeah, so I started working the steps, going to meetings. I was meeting with Chris all the time. Found a good home group, which I think is really important. All those 100 meetings are great, but I needed a place to call home to where people actually got to know the real me, because I needed to stop hiding.
Right. Yeah.
And you can still hide in the rooms of AA pretty easily if you don't have a home group.
Yeah.
And so I'm pretty, with my sponsees now, I'm pretty adamant about regular attendance at a home group, at least one, so that you can people actually can look in your eyes and see when the light's on or not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of that shining letting the light in.
Yeah.
Just letting other people see you.
Yeah.
And establishing that community, that connection. I know today I'm reliant upon my brothers in my home group, just as the same way I'm reliant on this higher power that I'm leaning on. I am just as much in reliance of maintaining a connection with you guys. I know that is vitally important to my recovery.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. I can't do this without you guys.
Yeah.
I just can't.
But that whole the other side of that is this damn thing that we have where we think we can, right? That we can manage it, and I don't have to do that, and I don't have to let you in, and I can just come to the meetings, and I can just, like I said, I'm with you on that. There's certain things I expect a guy to do, and that's one of them.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like, I'm natural. My natural state is to isolate.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife is the love of my life, but before I got sober, I relished the moments when I got to just be at the house by myself.
Yeah.
Like, she had to go, she has venues out of town, and she'd have to go stay the night in, like, Cincinnati, and I was so excited. I get the house to myself. I can use the way I want to use. I don't have to hide things. I mean, there's a pretty famous picture of me going around on our group thread that gets shown every now and then of a couple of weeks before I got sober, and she had FaceTimed me from Cincinnati when she was on one of those trips, and I look like I need to be taken to the hospital. I am messed up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I relish that isolation because I could get full blown all the way out. I mean, there were days that I looked I remember looking in the mirror thinking I had taken too much, that I was going to die. And then a half hour later, I'm taking more.
Right.
That's the kind of sickness.
Yeah.
But back to getting into the program, I was blessed, like we talk about a lot, like these coincidences that we just can't ascribe to being coincidences. There's a lot of people, good people, that I really respect today that could have walked up to me that morning at the Token Club. And I'm really grateful that it was Chris that walked up to me, because he has some similar worldviews and values about the spiritual side of our program that I needed to hear that day. That I would have, if I didn't hear what he had to say and the way he said it, I might have ran away. I might not have stayed. I needed to hear that to not worry so much about the God words on the wall. That spirituality and religion are way different. That it doesn't matter if I ascribe a lot of trauma to the religion I was raised with and don't like or believe in that God. I could form a higher power in my own understanding. And the way he put that, I in my first week, I had some pretty profound spiritual awakenings. I was one of the guys that was blessed with a pretty big aha moment in that first week.
Yeah.
And I started really working hard at it. It clicked for me. When I decided that I could be a spiritual creature again, that started a lot of healing in me. So much so that I think I was only 3 months sober. That pregnancy that we had found out about in the week that I gotten fired, we ended up having a very late term miscarriage. And instead of doing anything like I'd done before, it was on a Monday that we had gone to the doctor, 20 weeks pregnant, and they couldn't find the heartbeat.
Wow. Devastating.
And I spent that day actually being a good husband to my wife and listening to her, allowing her to grieve, allowing her to grieve with me instead of running from it. And the other bizarre thing I did was I went to my home group that night. And as soon as I walked in and they said, does anybody have a burning desire? I raised my hand and said, yeah, I do. And I told that whole room of guys about what I'd gone through. 3 months sober. The guy sitting next to me had gone through the exact same situation about 6 months prior.
Wow.
Put his arm around me. Said, dude, you're going to get through this. It's all right. And I was able to navigate that situation without even really a thought of drinking to bury it. And I never tried to get too sure or arrogant about my sobriety, but I always think that there's some situations that once you navigate through them, especially in the early days, and you do it sober, it gives you a certain amount of confidence in the track you're on. And that's one of those situations where, if 6 months from then I drank because I had a bad day at work, what a dick I would have been.
Yeah.
Like, you made it through your wife having a miscarriage sober, but because your boss yelled at you, you're going to drink, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
So it gave me a lot of confidence to move forward, and I did. And man, the promises they kept coming true for me. They kept. I got a job that was better, in my opinion, better than the job I had. It didn't have the ego boost that working in a fine dining restaurant did, but what it did was it gave me a Monday through Friday job where I'm working feeding people in office buildings, and there's not a lot of unhealthy people around. There's not a lot of nightlife around. I get to be home at night and the weekends to be with my wife. It gives me a much better life, and I get paid better than I did in the fine dining world. Yeah. And that happened to me 3 months sober.
Wow.
And the promises just kept, the more I aligned myself with the compass that I always had in me that I had tried to break, the more satisfaction I got out of life. We did end up having successful pregnancies, and we now have 2 kids. I am a pretty dorky dad about the fact that I just believe I was put on this earth to be a dad to those 2 boys.
Yeah.
I love them.
I love that about you. That's something that shines brightly is your fatherhood is a big beaming light that I see often.
Yeah, I love it. I get the time to do that now. I've not had a perfect walk in sobriety. There's been mistakes, especially in that first year.
Oh yeah.
When you beat back out, the substances out of your life, that disease, we say, this disease wants us dead, but drunk will do. Yep. Well, miserable will do for it too.
Yep.
And so it'll figure out any fire it can light. So there's definitely been some, especially in that first year, some situations that, like the promises do say, like baffled me, that I could find myself doing, stupid things. But, after that first year, I really started looking into how I work these principles in all my affairs, how I can take what I've learned to stop drinking and drugging and turn it to other unhealthy patterns in my life. Because to me, it's all about the patterns. When I feel a certain way, I look for an external stimuli to make that feel better. And those external stimuli are almost never good for me. Sometimes now they can be. I mean, I can put exercise in me or something like that. But my first reaction is probably
my default position is usually not that.
No, I mean, and it may not be a drink or a drug that I look to, but it could be something just as equally destructive.
Yeah. So, this morning, and I don't know where it came from, but I was out here setting up this morning, and a nicotine crave come over me, and like if I'd had a can of dip, and it come across that plainly was that it wouldn't be a big deal, and where it comes from I have no idea, and like I said, that's not the worst thing I could be doing, but I do worry today that if I allow like some backsliding and some other better habits that I've started and bad habits that I've put down, I do have a thing in me that I do feel like if I started allowing myself to backslide in any one area, that it could be the first slip of me backing into some of the other things that would be a hell of a lot worse for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I just I haven't really, I can't think of the last time like a drink or a drug has like tempted me.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like but the nicotine, and maybe it's because it's the most recent one. It's still been 480 something days.
That's pretty awesome.
Up on 500 days, but it still will come tap me on the shoulder once in a while. We call it the Nick bitch in our nicotine quitting world. Nick bitch come tapping on your shoulder. So yeah, you're saying to watch for those other things to come. I don't know what. I guess that's just that whole disease concept thing of looking for that external solution.
I always look at
Chemical
it as
solution.
like a game of whack-a-mole going on in my head. Like you get that mallet down on alcohol and opiates and stuff. Well, the mole pops up over here.
Yeah.
That's always the vision I have in my head. It's just the way I'm wired, and I know now some ways to cover that whole board. if I'm doing the right program, I cover that whole. If I'm working with others, if I'm meditating daily, if I'm eating right, if I'm clearing my side of the street, if I'm exercising, like all those things combined, and the disease is pretty under wraps.
Yeah.
But if I can let loose on one of those things for a day or two at a time, certain ones. But if if multiple ones of those things start going unattended to, then all of a sudden I can just feel it. You just feel like the beast waking up, like looking around. And it's like you said, it's not like a craving for a drink or a drug. It's just kind of like this feeling of looking around for like, almost feel like Quentin. What can I set on fire?
Yeah.
What in my life can I set on fire?
Yeah. Yeah, like a low-level anxiety or something that
Yeah.
just is like just an uneasiness and a discomfort. I guess it's that beginning of that restless, irritable, and discontent.
Yeah.
It's a discontentedness.
Yeah. I actually do remember the last time that a drink sounded like a good idea, and it's only been a year ago. And my son we had to take him to the emergency room. He had gotten bitten by a dog in the face, and it was rough for me, and I blame myself because my wife wasn't there at the time. And in the middle of the night, I'm having to go to my chef office to arrange some stuff for me to be out of work the next day to take care of my son. He's still in the emergency room getting stitched up, and it wasn't necessarily that a drink or a drug sounded that great. The oblivion that came along with it to give myself a temporary, pass on the guilt I was feeling.
Turn off the feelings.
Yes. Like one of our favorite authors says, Brene Brown, you don't get to just numb the bad stuff, though.
Yep.
When you numb it, you numb the good stuff too.
Yep.
And thankfully that night at 4:30 in the morning or whatever it was, where I'm driving across, is when my unit was over in Indiana. I'm driving over the Ohio River, and I remember vividly sitting there just thinking, like, oblivion sounds good. And 4:30 in the morning, I call my sponsor, and he picks up the phone. And I tell him how I'm feeling, and he tells me that I'm being silly, that it's not my fault, that these things happen, and that Emmett's going to be fine, and that I'm only going to wake up from oblivion feeling even more guilty because I'll have two things to feel guilty about.
Yep.
And just the magic of this program that at 4:30 in the morning, I don't even have to dial my phone twice.
Yeah, no doubt, dude.
And somebody picks up.
Yeah. Well, like you said, that for whatever reason, how that works, and I really don't give a shit how it works. That when I get that compass needle aligned, or I'm attempting to, it doesn't have to be aligned, because that would like insinuate I got some perfect thing going on.
Right.
But when I'm making efforts in my life to make those course corrections and keep it that direction, those kind of things, that guy picks up the phone. That's the sponsor, the future sponsor sits next to you in the meeting. The guy who has just had a miscarriage not too long ago is sitting by you in a different meeting. These I call them miracles. You said promises, same thing. It's the same connotation in our lives of being aligned and having things work out. It's just, I always say, like, whatever his higher power thing is, didn't bring me. I know when I come down to this spot, sometimes this self-doubting nature, I think, is another common, there's a bunch of common attributes we have. This not feeling good enough, not being enough, of this self-doubting nature that we have, that just can't work out for me. After having everything that's happened for me in the past 4 years, I will still sit down and say, this next thing won't work.
Yeah.
And I go, well, my higher power didn't bring me this far to drop me off. I just can't believe that that's happened, that the universe, whatever this power that has allowed me to have what I've, to be open to receiving the stuff that I have received, is not going to end tomorrow. So that's that reliance too, that knowing, life is a momentum building thing. There's a snowball that comes with recovery. It keeps on gaining ground, and you can become more and more solid in your recovery, and knowing that the next thing that happens is going to work out for you.
Yeah, and the other part of it is that I could be given far less of a thing today and be happier than that same thing being given to me 8 years, or a better thing given to me 8 years ago. Nothing was making me happy back then. No external thing. It was an inside job.
Yeah.
So mean, part of the promises or miracles for me is that the way I view everything has changed.
Absolutely.
So,
perception.
Yeah, I mean, back then $1 million wouldn't have made me happy.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't.
Yeah.
I know that. Actually, I'm pretty certain $1 million would have killed me.
Right.
8 years ago.
Yeah.
6 years ago. But yeah, so after that first year though, I really concentrated on making it a whole life thing, and then, around the same time I started going to my current home group, Spiritual Underground, which I'll echo what you've said before. If you don't think your home group's the best one in the world, get a new one. I know intellectually that we don't have the best home group in the world, but I feel like we do.
Yeah. Well, today it's the best one for me.
Exactly.
And when I say the best that I have the best sponsor in the world and I have the best home group in the world, I'm speaking from my experience. I'm not saying that mine needs to be yours at any level, right?
Right.
So it's the best home group for me today.
Yeah. And I needed a group because of all that dodging and manipulating and never letting anybody in to see the true real me, I never had the kind of friends that most people maybe that aren't alcoholics have in their life. I didn't have that super loving male friend ever in my life. And my current home group, where I met this group of guys, now I do. I mean, I have a core group of guys that they know everything about me. Everything. Yeah. And they still, despite knowing everything about me, still look at me and say they love me, which sometimes astounds me, but it's the truth. And I love them, and we share so much together. I mean, a lot of us are getting our families together tonight to, have a chili cook-off.
Yeah, right. Yep.
We're these days we're making excuses to get together because we do love each other that much. But that was first part of the progression is just really, I think Spiritual Underground really opened me up even more. My old home group was great, but there wasn't super deep connection for me there. Now, some of the same people went to that home group, and I had pretty good connections with them, but I think getting into that room with just guys where we get to open up a little bit more, and when I first started going there, we maybe had 15, 20 guys top, so it was pretty intimate. So that really started the next progression, I think, in my sobriety. And then, some of the guys in that room that inspired me, and you're one of them, to take it to the next level again in the past couple of years, where, I finally started finding out the meditation part of my program, which has been huge for me. I'm an avid reader, I always have been, but I started reading some stuff to really wrap my head around making the spirituality part personal for me, and to form a deeper spiritual connection, and that's been really my mission for the past couple of years. And a year ago, when I celebrated 4 years, I stood up and said, this year I need to sponsor people. That's my mission. And lo and behold, a couple months later, I had not one sponsee, I have 3.
Right. Yeah.
That just fall into my lap. It's like I put it out there in the universe, and then whoop, there you go.
Right.
More than what you asked for.
Absolutely.
And that's, I had sponsored people before. One of them went back out. One of them moved to Alabama, is still sober. But, this is the 3 I have now it's just been a great experience. One guy's super fresh in the program, and so that's been fun to work with him, fun to see the light go on. I mean, so rewarding to see a guy's eyes change, demeanor change. Yeah. And he calls me every morning. I mean, every morning on the way to work, at the same time he calls me, and it just starts my day off the right way, thinking about somebody else.
Yeah.
The sponsorship deal this year has been huge, and I'm not sitting here trying to think I've got it all figured out, but there are times where I sit and I think, how could it get better than this?
Yeah, I'm exactly in the same shoes. I
know that I'm aware that it probably could, because it always has. But right now, it just doesn't seem. I have an amazing marriage that I don't deserve. The fact that my wife stuck around through all of that carnage I just told you about is just a testament to the kind. I mean, I don't know how she saw what the man that I sit here today underneath all that, but somehow she says she did.
Yeah.
We have a very happy, open marriage. She knows everything about me. You know, she knows I'm an open book. We have so much fun together. She's my best friend. I just have so many good things. So many good things.
Yeah, you were saying that. You caught me with one of those things, and I get the sentiment of it, but the don't deserve it thing always triggers me. We do.
Yeah.
With all these blessings too, I find myself still peering around the next corner, looking for what is next, though. So I nod like that. Mark Houston says it, and my sponsor kind of started to attribute it to me. There's a couple things I've stole from other people that are beginning to be attributed to me, but I smell more. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I know there's going to be more. I know there's more things around the corner. There doesn't have to be, but that continual optimism helps my spirit, keeps me on that higher frequency, that there is something around the corner, next corner. There always has been.
What's crazy for me is that when I think the same thing, but it used to be when I would think I'd smell more, it'd be, more things, more money, more whatever. And I smell more too, but it's a completely different kind of more today.
It's more like a more opportunity, and actually I find more ways to give of myself is usually where the blessing ends up being. Is I find some new way to participate in my own recovery. It has nothing to do with material goods. Has nothing to do with stuff.
Right.
It's some new way, like this podcast. It was just, I had this thing come around, and it just appeared through some conversations with people and you guys, this brotherhood, and boom, now we got a new way to participate in our recoveries and to give of ourselves. There's that other, Christopher's book's coming out. Should be for sale any day.
Yeah.
And that's going to be another way, because we're all like ground level soldiers on that. And a new way to give this thing beyond just our normal alcoholic addict community. We shine our lights everywhere, right? I mean, that. People see you, and that's one of the other cool things about recovery is once you start doing this, even people who didn't know that you had the problem see a change in you. I had an opportunity yesterday where somebody walked up to me, and a gal at work, and said, "You're different. I've known you for about 5 years, and I started here about 5 years ago, and you are different. What happened?" And you get that opportunity, and happened to be that the guy sitting across the table from me, because I just am open with that today, said, started talking about his brother dying of alcoholism, and he's afraid he's going to die any day. And they keep on getting hospital calls, and, and I get a chance to share some hope with him, and, where that goes, I don't know. But you keep on having those opportunities, But with the book, with Christopher's book, we actually have, what I've said from reading it is that it's finally put together. The beginning of the big book starts talking about how we relate to our Alcoholics Anonymous book starts talking about how we can relate to the symptoms of alcoholism, and how we have the spiritual sickness that manifests itself as overuse of chemicals. The beginning of Christopher's book is talking about how the same manifestation of this spiritual sickness happens without the chemicals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we see that, so that's that missing component that's that missing component that from the time I've come into AA in 2011, which is 8 years ago, I've heard people say, I wish that the people outside could get the same thing. Everybody could use the 12 steps. We should. Yeah. I wish my wife had a program. I wish,
Just don't tell her that.
Yeah, these other, you hear that floating around, and finally that missing component to me has been, how can we because we've had to have the pain of the ism. We've had to have that be on us to be able to demonstrate to somebody. And now I have a set of tools that I can show somebody who hasn't necessarily fell into the depths of the alcoholism, the chemical dependency side of it, the chemical use, how their spirit has been sickened potentially, and how this might help heal them.
Yeah.
I still wonder about the desperation, the missing component of the desperation.
Yeah, you really gotta want it.
Yeah, but they're out there though, because
Yeah.
we see them, and man, I have this thing where I want to apologize for what I say at times, but I know a lot of people that try Al-Anon, our loved ones who try that, and they see that because they're looking for this same thing that we have found, and they want it, and they're not finding it there, and they're missing some place to find it. And I think this is going to be a place to find it. Mm-hmm. Another component that I found is that when somebody has some issue that I know that my heart tells me that the 12 steps would help them, I have to point them elsewhere. I have to say, go there or go over there, and now I'm going to have the ability to say, come with me.
Right.
Because, man, that's a big difference, man. When you're going to stand here and tell me that you got some help to offer me and you're going to point that direction,
yeah,
I'm not going that way.
Right.
I'm just not.
I already swallowed my pride and came to you.
Yeah. If you can say, come to me, I think that's going to open up a whole lot of doors for a lot of people to start getting some help with what we say, a design for living that works.
Yeah.
I said that.
And I've had a few friends recently talk to me about that very thing of wanting to look at their lives in a different way, wanting to look at the world a different way, recognizing patterns but in their life, but not really, having the right tools. And, like you quote, is it Eric or Brent Weinstein that said,
I think I've heard them both actually say it. I think it was, I think it's Brett was the one that I've heard say about the sense-making apparatuses.
Yeah, that our sense-making apparatuses like religion have just stopped working as effectively in our modern age. And I know a lot of people that church and that kind of thing is just not their deal, but they still need an avenue to address their spiritual health.
Yep.
And if I didn't have, when I say I'm grateful to be an alcoholic, that's not just some crazy wordplay where I'm trying to like convince a new guy to keep coming back. That's really what I mean, because the way I have to live my life now, take the alcoholism away. If I didn't have that way of life, and I didn't need it to stay alive, I wouldn't be as happy. I know that because I have a way to address all my issues in the day they happen, go to bed with a clean slate, to be connected to my brothers, to be connected to the world, and not look at it as I'm a victim of it, or that it's something that I need to get one over on, but just to be one of many. And without the 12 steps, I wouldn't know where to find that, because for me, and I'm not putting down anybody that church is their deal, but for me, it's just not going to work for me.
Yeah. And it's not working for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, and I talk about this a lot. I live this recovery thing. So when I'm out marching around in my walks through the day, whether if it's at my masseuse yesterday, which is another blessing, I giggle at that, that I'm doing that for myself today. I'm actually taking care of Dan. So I'm talking to her, and she starts opening up a little bit of like what, the coolest thing that happened yesterday was Christopher getting that proof copy of that book.
Yeah.
And that was on my mind,
Oh yeah.
And so she was asking, and I told her about it, and she expressed the same sentiment, that she's just not finding. She's a spiritual gal. You can look around her room that she does this work in and see the spirituality shining through in it the way that she has it decorated. Mm-hmm. She's lacking the community part of it, which I think is vitally important, and part of the reason why the churches do work, when they work, is because of the community aspect.
Yep.
When you're on a solo spiritual journey, man, that's a tough road.
Yeah.
And you're trying to find somebody that, we have that same thing where that not being able to be part of, that not be able to have that connection with other humans. So if you can get on the same, and that's our whole 12-step thing is so cool. That's like it's somewhat of a missing link globally, is that we're allowed to come up with our own conception of a higher power, and we are not rejected for the one we choose.
Yeah.
Or the one we make up, or the one we come up with, the one we develop. And those two things, like, that's world changing stuff, because that half of the battles in the history of the world have been over those 2 points.
Yeah. Well, and it's amazing, like, the concepts that work so well in it that could work for everybody else. Yeah. You're right. Like, you have a problem. You've tried to fix it. You can't. So you obviously need to form a concept of a higher power to help you. And then once you do that, you got to be taught how to be vulnerable, because you can't fix a problem until you can admit what the problem is.
Yep.
So that's that vulnerability coming in.
Exactly.
And then you got to take action. And that, to me, that's the big thing that was missing from my upbringing in the church, was that there wasn't really a lot of action. There was no programs of action. It was a lot of don't do this, but there wasn't a lot of, but do this instead.
Yeah, like Jordan Peterson in that one thing says, not in a, we don't want to do this stuff in a thou shalt not manner. Yeah, you tell me what not to do.
Right.
Yeah, tell me what to do.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I need to be told what to do.
Yeah. And we have these concrete tools in order to do these things, right? We have concrete action-taking mechanisms that allow us, if you just do it. Another thing I stole from somebody else, it's not a program of some get it and some don't. It's a program of some do and some don't. Yeah. We have this stuff that in our lights shine, right? People see it, so it's attractive. And if they want that, we just say, do this. And
your thoughts will follow later.
Right.
That's the wonderful thing about it, is that,
good point.
I spent so many years knowing I had a problem and avoiding this program because of my thoughts. When I got into a position where I was desperate enough to just do it, my thoughts came along. And all of a sudden, just a few weeks into it, the reservations I had got in line, because I started seeing the proof of feeling better, not craving alcohol and drugs anymore, not having, I don't think I can adequately put it into words. I've tried with my wife, but I still don't think I can explain it to her. The internal battle and how painful it is to wake up and tell yourself for an hour that you're not going to go to the liquor store, that you're not going to call the pill guy, and to do it anyway.
Yep.
I don't know that people that have never dealt with that can really know how horrible that battle is.
Yeah.
It sucks.
Yep.
Yeah.
The stock going to stop tomorrow's, all the self-promising that I could never, I could never hold up to.
But once you do the action and that stuff goes away and you see it work there,
and you see it work in others.
And it fixed. One thing I picked up from my sponsor is, I'm just like you. I don't think I'm that smart of a guy. I just think I know how to memorize what smart people say. And somebody told me, we're going to fix the bullet hole first. We'll get to the paper cut later.
Yep.
Well, I watched this program work on my bullet hole. That it fixed that. And so now I've got all the faith in the world that when I apply it to the paper cuts in my life, it's going to wash right over those too.
Yep. Yeah, I really do think that I'm sure there's some things. I'm sure there's some mental, chemical issues with people that the 12 steps are not going to be solely sufficient for. I think it can be. I think it can be employed in addition to, if you need, if you may need whatever kind of medical help from the medical community, you might need to deal with some wiring issues or whatever, some chemical imbalances or whatever. But I really do have a certain feeling that this is cool. This design for living will work if you will do it. Period. For anybody, and it will make, because I was talking to somebody the other day, and I beat this drum. I was like, would you like to be a little better? Would you like to feel a little better, just a little? Would you like to be a little more happy? Would you like to be a little more content? Well, yeah. Well, who wouldn't? Well, we have a way to be. It's going to give you probably more than that. That Dan Harris wrote a meditation book called 10% Better. Mm-hmm. He said, because if you've heard him talk, he says, I think it's probably a lot more than that. If you employ meditation in your life, you're going to get a lot more than 10%, but I can sell you 10%. You won't buy 50.
Right.
If I told you, do you want to be 50% better, you'd be going, yeah, no, I'm not buying that.
And I'm glad you brought up meditation again, because that's just such a big important part of the program to me, because before then I had the ability to stay mad about a thing for a long time or internalize something. But when you really get into the practice of like a mindful meditation where you can step back instantly and kind of look at it, you kind of lose the ability to stay mad for very long.
Yep.
It's not numbing it, it's just recognizing it for what it is. Okay, that situation sucked. Now, can I act on it? Well, then do that. Can I not act on it? Well, then I need to accept it.
Yeah.
Those are my two choices.
Yeah.
Or my third choice is to continue to try to feel it over and over again, build a resentment, and then go do something stupid over it.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got tools today to deal with the little bumps in the road that always happen.
Yeah, they're going to come.
The stuff is share it with somebody else. I always say another thing, I need to release this negative energy in my life to the universe through safe people. So I have people today, there's not everybody, because if I dump some of this stuff on the wrong people, man, they look at me like, maybe I need to be locked up. But if I use it on the right people, if I dump it on safe people, they know how to handle it. They know what it is. They know it's my disease talking the same kind of, that noise. Mm-hmm. And they don't get all upset and worried about me necessarily, right? They can take my temperature and know, he's just, venting, just discharging that energy. This whole thing about these tools of meditation of slowing the mind. We did an exercise, and sometimes I want to hold it under my head, but we did some exercise over the weekend at the last yoga teacher training where we wrote down a list of things. We asked each other in pairs, well, who are you? And you just kept on repeating that over and over again. We made a big giant list of who we were. Father, son, woodworker, engineer, spiritual guy, yogi, and all this stuff. And then they went in and they asked you a series of questions where you eventually crossed every one of them out on your list. And then we also got quiet. We did a thing where it's really weird, man. We stood and we gazed into one another's eyes for long, uncomfortable times from like 18 inches away, like foot to 18 inches away.
Wow.
And just stare into another man or another woman, another human. It didn't matter. Sex goes away. Mm-hmm. Another person's eyes for a long period of time. Then we switch partners, and you do it again with another one, and then we meditated. After that, we got quiet and stayed quiet for 12 hours. We were supposed to turn everything off, and then we come in the next morning and meditated. Not until after our morning meditation did we break that silence. We had to actually, there were some things where you were told loud to, let your loved ones know they weren't in on the deal, so you kind of got to tell them why you're not going to talk to them.
Right.
You go home, or if you have young kids, they're not going to understand that either, and we're not wanting to like freaking traumatize people either. Right. A friend of mine said something one time about, you got to listen through the noise to hear the signal. Mm-hmm. And, life has got a lot of noise in it, and all these things that I think I am, all these things, that's somewhat noise, can be, Yes, that's good stuff that I'm doing this yoga and that I'm a sober guy and that I'm a father, that's not to discount any of that to say it's noise, but there's a lot more to us than that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm also, as long as I continue to let the noise chatter, and that's where that's where I'm kind of going with that, is that's another tool to quiet the noise so that I can like hear the signal. Yeah. That thing where that's the way I can actually be open to letting these new opportunities in. Because if I fill myself with all that noise,
there's no more room.
There's no room for it.
Yeah,
it's the cup that's overfull.
It's kind of like a sorting mechanism for me. Meditation is like I can like take a objective look and sort, because I don't have any control really over my thoughts. To the extent of what I put in, like entertainment wise, or that has something to do with it. But other than that, I mean, my thoughts don't really define me. But if I'm doing meditation the right way, I get to like kind of look at this whole pile of things that's in my brain and sort the stuff out and be like, okay, that one not working, that one not working. Oh, I need to focus on this one. It allows me to sort through everything and figure out, what actions need to be taken.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hearing the signal.
Yeah, hearing
through
the
noise. Yeah. I like Scott Lee says, I'm not responsible for my thoughts, but I am responsible for how long I think them.
Yeah, I agree.
When you were saying about that, because somebody else said like thoughts could be like another sense in a way. Like if all of a sudden I'm standing outside and I smell something bad, I don't like get upset about that.
Yeah, you don't have control over that.
But so when a thought comes through, and I don't have to stand there, I can move away if it doesn't pass, which, a lot of that same thing. But when a thought comes in, I won't want to criticize myself for having that thought.
Absolutely.
And start to beat myself up. Why are you thinking like that? And then I'll just nurture it,
But
and maybe I'll think about it all day.
Yeah.
To bring it in tomorrow.
Found ways to at least regulate the thoughts that I don't want to have by what I choose to expose my brain to.
Yeah.
If it's pretty easy. If you don't want to, if you don't want to look at other women as just merely objects, well, don't put in images into your brain that treat women as objects.
Right. Yep.
Now, does that mean you're never going to have a sexual thought again about another woman? No, absolutely not.
Nope.
But you're going to see the frequency of them go way down.
And it goes to that old Indian thing about the wolf you feed.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you feeding in you?
Yeah.
And what I put in me. That's another whole concept behind this thing. I put all this positivity into me from these various angles. Now, it takes a lot of practice, right? And time and being around and applying myself, actually giving of myself, participating in my recovery. Then I have this positivity coming out of me, and it is, if I pull negativity into me, what do I have to give out?
Yeah.
Negativity. That's all I have, but there's simple principles like it, but I didn't have it. I didn't get any of these tools. I don't know if I don't know if I missed that day in class or what, if I was sick that week, what happened, but I didn't get these tools that I have today at, almost 50 years old and, in my late 40s, had to hit the bottom that I hit in order to be introduced to these tools that were revolutionized my whole way of thinking and operating on this, as I do my day-to-day walk. Completely changed me.
Yeah, I didn't get him either, and I don't think we missed that day in class. I think in our culture, specifically in our culture, here in America, I think that some of this stuff is pretty foreign to a lot of people. I mean, meditation and yoga and stuff like that has gained a lot of ground in the past,
short amount of time, really.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's just been, I want to look at it, maybe it's just been my exposure to it, but I really think there is a movement afoot.
Yeah.
I think.
And I think it's people searching for
seekers,
other spiritual solutions that aren't traditional for this country. But I think that's, especially you and I, we grew up in the Bible Belt where most of the people back when I was raised looked at meditation as some sort of demonic thing, or yoga even. Like, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think we necessarily miss the tools. I think it's just...
that's more of a joke about the missing the day in class. But,
I know.
But I didn't get them.
Yeah.
And it's not a fault of my parents.
No.
Ultimately, I have no way to lay this stuff at the foot of my parents, honestly. No. Now, there's some genetic stuff that I came to find out that, and it took me a while to process. My mom's genetic disposition and mostly some of her side of the family, really. And that's not blame. I wanted to see that right off my head. It's going, oh, dude, don't say that. You're blaming them, but not. Yeah. It's just the fact of the matter that this stuff come down through. But I can't. My point is that I had a great upbringing, and my parents were really fantastic people. Hell, my dad lives with me today.
I love your dad.
And it's not their, but they also at the same time, I didn't get these tools. Now, hopefully what I'm actually trying to do today is actually pass these tools on to my kids. They've had experience with 12-step philosophy in Alateen. They really don't work the steps there and do that kind of work there, which is another one of those things. And that's another one of these things to circle back to this book, is that we're not putting age limits on these things either.
Yeah.
We're going to try to actually introduce these principles to younger people too. Maybe if you're 13, or maybe if you're 10, maybe you don't necessarily, fourth and fifth step might be something, but you can begin to start having some of these tools and learn them. And I think you could still do those steps as a kid. It's just not going to be like heavy like we had, right?
Well, I mean,
and maybe you don't ever feel that in Chris's book, he talks about the garbage can that we're carrying around.
Yeah.
And, all the stuff you talked about, all those traumatic events and this stuff that I generally call, just using the big book term of calamity, that I throwed in my garbage can. I just kept on, I'm doing emotions of taking stuff off the front of me and putting it into my backpack in this garbage can and getting all stinky back there. Maybe I don't ever have to get a stinky garbage can. Maybe I start processing this stuff as 10 years old, 15 years old. I don't know where that is. And start beginning to clean that can out early rather than get to the point, because I think that's what our sense of desperation, in a sense, in a metaphorical sense, is that my can completely filled up and started splashing over. And and I'm walking around and I'm knowing you can smell it. I know I can smell it.
Right. I've got.
And I'm figuring you smell it. And any place I go, I feel like I splash a little bit around, and then they know that my stink has been there. That I got some a little bit of feelings of not deserving to share oxygen with you because of my stench. If I never do allow myself to, if I got a set of tools. So that's what we've done with, that's what the point of the religious upbringing was, is to start you when you were young so that you didn't ever get to a point that you were, and it worked for a long time. It really did.
And I think that was the point I was going to make, is that kids, we have no qualms about kids, being in religious upbringings at 5 years old, 4 years old, whatever. And it's way above them. Yeah. One of the teachers I kind of listened to, Sam Harris, his wife has success getting 5 and 6 year olds to meditate, to do mindful meditation. So I don't think that these principles are, that we just might have to translate it down a little bit.
Yeah.
I try with my 3.5-year-old. I mean, just the other day on the way to school, he was telling me that something about he didn't want to be good, and I said, you don't have to want to be good. You just have to be good. The want doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah.
You just got to do the action.
Yep.
There's things that, especially in the beginning, I didn't want to do, but once I did them, like we said earlier, the thinking always follows the action. You're never going to think your way into a better life. Right. You've got to act first.
Yeah.
And that, time and time again, that has been my experience. I can sit here and think all day long, and it doesn't do me a damn bit of good until I put my feet on the ground and start walking the journey.
Yeah, Don talks a lot about that. He said, one of the things he said the other night, I heard him just speak at Token Club here in New Albany, and he does a little thing about penicillin, and you don't have to want it to work.
Yeah.
You just have to take it.
Yeah.
You just and that's the action to do.
Yeah.
You don't have to want it to work. If you'll just do it, it will work.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that first day of AA I didn't want any part of.
Yeah.
But I saw a guy that claimed that he had the same demon in him that I did, and that he said I did these things and I felt better.
Yep.
It wasn't anything about believing. It wasn't anything about faith necessarily. It was just, this is what I did. And I'm pretty certain if you do it, it'll be good for you too. And it had happened for me.
I want to make sure I read this correctly. Pull something up here because I don't want to misquote it. So we'll just get it on the table since we're beating it around. Book's coming out. It's going to be on Amazon in the next few days, and this is a Saturday, February the 16th of 2019. So sometime over the next few days, probably 72 hours or so, a book's coming out called 12-Step Spiritual Recovery, How to Reclaim Your Original Self-Soul. The author on the book is, we call him Christopher Cohn, and it's on this book, so I'm not out in any anonymity issues. We try not to say last names on the show just to protect people's anonymity, but I mean, I think if you're going to author a book and put your name on there, you have outed yourself, and,
Yep.
and this ball is in motion now, so we've kind of been a little bit under wraps with it in a sense. But James Christopher Cohn is the author's name. Once again, it's 12-Step Spiritual Recovery, and it's a way to bring this 12-step philosophy to everybody. And it's also an advancement of the concepts and principles behind it from what they were 80-something years ago. Everything gets better, right, as we advance it, and it evolves. And I don't, those words of better and good and all that I don't like to use, but I don't have any better words to use.
It's the
other thing it also does
modernization.
is it actually, there's a big piece of 12-step stuff that is tribal knowledge. It's one of us sharing it with the other, and I think that's also a dynamic of a cool thing about why this works, because not everything is in that original blue book that we work from. I'm teaching a lot of things and concepts that I've got from my sponsor that are not in the pages in there, and I remember doing the same thing with my sponsor of going, where is that? And it's like, well, that's not in there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and so I was a little bit, like, well, so now we're making shit up,
right? Changing the rules.
Yeah,
already.
because I'm real book oriented, I mean, I am. I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, if it's not written down here, what do you mean?
Right.
Anybody could be throwing this shit at the wall. Are you just experimenting on me?
Right.
I don't want to be your guinea pig here.
Right.
But it's actually what, and again, Christopher will tell you very quickly that this stuff is not his. He's had a number of great teachers. I want to be real clear when I talk, and that's why I attribute the sayings that I hear to the people that I can remember. If I can remember where they came from, I try to attribute it to the right person, and it's probably not even, some of it probably theirs. It's more of this tribal knowledge, these sayings that come down the pike. Who come up, like, try to trace back strike when the iron is hot.
Yeah.
Well, that's...
and Christopher's my grand sponsor because he is my sponsor's sponsor.
Right.
So I feel very fortunate to be in that lineage.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, some of that stuff's not in the big book, and the way that he taught his guys to sponsor people is a unique thing.
Yep.
And that day that I met my sponsor Chris, it's going to get real confusing, but when I met my sponsor Chris at the Token Club, there was a part, Christopher was essentially sponsoring me through Chris.
Right.
Because he is the one that taught him the path. And so I'm equally excited to see this book come out because it is, from my understanding, pretty much a manifestation of the path that I walked.
It is, yeah. There's a bunch of things, and I'm not going to question them. I know just the way that one of the things is now it really, in what Christopher's saying and what I'm hearing, is it making it a little bit easier to actually give it away, because there won't be so much of the regurgitation to me having to tell you so much of it. Now, I don't know what to be lost in that either, but it's all in there. It's a manual. It's like an unabridged version now that's actually documented. And there's a bunch of ways, that's another thing. There's a bunch of right ways to do the 12 steps.
Yeah.
And if you do them, you're going to get some benefit.
Yeah.
One of the ways that I know that this, I know in my heart that this is one of the optimized ways. There's I'm sure there's other ones. This is the only one I'm aware of.
Right.
That you get a lot of bang out of the buck with single trips through the steps and a lot, you see people really changing in a really, we say that all the time. We've got guys that's got a year and a half of sobriety or something. And if they walk into most places, it looks like they've been around for years.
Yeah. I mean,
when they share and talk.
One of the guys that I've gotten the closest to in the past few months is only 4 or 5 months sober, and you'd think this guy would have been sober as long as me.
Yeah.
It's crazy how quickly the lights can get turned on if you fully submit. But again, we're talking about guys that were desperate.
Yep, desperate and
willing.
They also, and they also had this group of guys to look at as us. That shine a light that's very bright and obvious. That we convince them that you do this and you get to have this.
Yeah.
You walk this path, you get to have this. And they see it in us, and it makes it really, and these, takes a lot of the reservation away from them of that, how that's another common. I love to jot these down, the lies. I keep on coming up with them, the ones that says, I can quit anytime I want to. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not afraid of anything. Another one is it can't happen for me.
Right.
It can't happen for me.
Yeah. And I have a whole list of reasons why it can't happen for me.
But we take a lot of that off of the table for a guy when they see us and begin to know us, because we've had this spiritual awakening thing through this process, and it's clear that all of us shine a similar color light. We're all vastly different, but that same light is apparent from all of us. If you look around the room, you go, wow. Hey, and everybody's touched. Everybody that comes to our meeting and it gets to experience that. Regardless if they're in the program, if they're visitors, if they're our loved ones, they come in and they walk away going, something is different in there.
And that just shows the importance of the community aspect of our program. the 12 steps, the community, the good sponsorship, those things all are necessary components, because we are a program of attraction, and the community aspect of our program is what does the attracting.
Yeah.
You get to come in and say, wow, either those guys are lying and they're really high on something, or they are happy.
Yeah.
And we are a bunch of happy assholes in that room.
Yep, and they hang around with us for a little bit, and they realize that we're not taking anything.
Nope.
That becomes really apparent quickly, too. We're getting to have all kinds of cool ways. Like I said, we're getting together outside the rooms. We're having other ways to participate in our recoveries and levels that I could have only dreamed about. It's just going to be really cool these next few. I just keep on thinking the future just continues to be bright, and to be able to give this thing away to people that's not been accessible to opens up a whole new door to me. I'm like at a whole nother window of participating, and the more I can do time and time again. The solution in that book and in that is that to help somebody else, give this away to somebody else, help somebody, turn your attention to helping somebody else. So now I have a whole nother pool and a whole nother avenue to go down to be able to cultivate that part of my recovery.
And that it's crazy to me how much and it's probably that my compass has been aligned, or I'm seeking to keep it aligned. But the people that I pay attention to, just like you, I consume podcasts, on a record level. But a lot of the guys that I kind of look to as teachers talk so much about the turning your attention to other people. Guys that aren't, I'm not talking about sobriety podcasts. I'm talking about guys that I look to for spirituality and meditation stuff. Guys that are, some of these guys are like movie stars, and they're like, the only thing that makes me feel good is going and helping somebody.
Right.
It's just, it's a concept that's getting a lot more airtime these days.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to be able to be on the ground floor of this thing too. I've been excited since I knew it was in existence. And I have read some of the other material out there that's attempting to do the same thing, and not putting those books down at all, but to see the path that is very specific to what has given me so much joy get published. I feel like, without trying to take anything from Christopher, I feel like there's a piece of me in there too, because that's my journey. And it's just, it's super exciting to be able to just hand that to somebody and be like, this is how I got so cheesy happy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You don't have to listen to me ramble on anymore. You can just read it there.
And you could technically go through this book on your own. But the only place you really would have to have somebody is in a fifth step. You could do that. I don't think you could do that with the big book personally. I think you would have a hell of a time actually completing the 12 steps on your own without a guide.
Yeah, you got to read between the lines too much
through
there.
The book of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah,
you'd get some relief somehow, but man, the other thing is I think you'd constantly doubt what if you was doing it right. You know what I mean?
I think maybe you could do it with the 12 and 12.
Yeah, you probably could. You could do it a lot better with that than you could. This book here, it actually is a manual for how to do this.
Right.
So you could, and it even has a lot of talk in there about in the fifth step. If you're not in the program, how to maybe go find somebody to do a fifth step with. Which one of the things is go to open AA meetings. And,
I was going to say, go to a church on a Tuesday night.
Yeah. Go to an open AA meeting. Because how much, and I've said this, I thought about it when I read it in there. Like, how much use would it be if you're sitting in some meeting, man, and you see somebody and they're new, and maybe they wouldn't even, they don't even know nothing. They don't know enough to raise their hands as they're new to Alcoholics Anonymous, because they don't want to do that because they're not, right? They're not an alcoholic. They're not. So they're sitting in this meeting, and they're new. Meetings I go to, and after the meeting, they come up and ask you if they could talk to you for a minute, and they go, "Hey, I am not an alcoholic or an addict, but I got this book, and I'm walking these steps. So I got this book, and it's got a thing in there about coming to these meetings and asking somebody. I need somebody to do a fifth step with. Would you be available to do that with me? You'd be like, fuck yeah,
right?
Yeah, the total juice is somebody just come up and ask you to do that, and be a little off base because the way we do it, it's a build. That's kind of a crescendo thing,
Ours are usually so full of some pretty depraved stuff that we want to walk in and talk to a stranger about them.
Yeah. So that, and I imagine as we can get this thing around, that's it. It's got the way to do the 12 steps in it. It's unabridged. It doesn't leave any details out. It is so deep and so thorough on the details That it's. I mean, he spent his, I don't know how many years, 6 to 10 years or something like that of his life energy putting this together, and so it's the clock is ticking and it's going to be out really soon. We have been talking for 2 hours and 5 minutes. So I think we probably ought to do some concluders and wrap it up. I think we push our limits at 2 hours. Although with podcasting, you and I will listen to ones that are almost 4 hours and stuff.
Yeah, I got no problem with it.
But not everybody likes to listen to them that long.
Yeah, I got to be sensitive to that.
Maybe I will actually go back and look at it, because the main focus of us being here today, we kind of digressed at the end, and I think we knew we were going to do that in some level, even though we didn't plan it.
I'm okay with that.
The reason was here was to get your story, so I really do appreciate it. I have not heard your story. I've heard you speak. I've heard enough. We talked enough, but you get pieces. But like the puzzle pieces were all aligned for me today, so I appreciate that. That's one of the cool. That's something really cool about being on this other side of the microphone, is to hear these people's stories like one-on-one and get to know, again, I improved that connection between me and my higher power by one way of improving my connection with you. Yeah. Whoever the you is that's on the other side of the table. Today it's Nick. And so I get to do that, and the thing juices me up to be able to do it. We've got a couple things I want to touch on before we conclude that. 12-step spiritual recovery. How to reclaim your original spirit, soul. That might be the other way around. Might be soul, spirit. But James Christopher Cohn. It'll be on Amazon soon. Our circles will know about it, and as soon as it is on, I'll put it on a link to it on spiritualunderground.org.
Well, by the time this podcast is published, it should be.
That book should be out. Yeah. No doubt. Because I'm about a week ahead now, which is a good thing. I kind of like having that little bit of a backlog, because there will be a weekend sometime where I'm not able to record or something will happen, and if I'll have some in the can, I'll be able to continue. We will be able to put out new content regularly. So that's all I have. Well, you got any concluders you want to close up with?
I'm really happy to be able to do this today with you. You are very special to me. You're one of my best friends, so to be able to share this with you is great. And anybody listening to this, I never thought this would work for me. I never thought I'd be sitting here this happy. I thought I was doomed to a life of misery. And today, I wake up almost every day, and it's the happiest day of my life. And I'm not just saying that. So if you're sitting out there and you feel like that, talk to one of us, because it can get better. It will get better with some action. Yeah.
And in that regard, I have an email address on spiritualunderground.org that you can contact me if you got any feedback for this. Hell, if you're looking for somebody to talk to, that's what I do today. My life is folded up into recovery fully. If you do, I never thought about that till you said reach out to us, but I can hook you up with somebody to talk to. Mm-hmm. and possibly get on this road that we're on, this road to recovery, if you need that. And so if you will reach out on that email address, I get those instantly. I'm a plugged in dude. There will not be a lag between you sending that email and me seeing it. Mm-hmm. We can hook you up. I never had thought about that. We may become a helpline. But I'm perfectly open to that. Juice, Nick, thank you for sharing with me today, man. Thank you for the discussion. Thank you for being my friend. Again, like this best friend thing, this connection is just unbelievable.
Yes, sir.
I treasure our friendship, and I look up to you the same way, man. Feels like brothers. Yeah. It's so cool to be doing this.
Absolutely.
Love you to death. Thanks for coming in, man. Juicy story, and peace out.
Yeah, we're almost home. Look in the mirror, you might find a face that you have never seen. Picture keeps getting clearer, path unwinds, and it leads you back to me. Yeah, we're almost home. Yeah, we're almost home. People stuck in the past.